Hey guys, we're going to take some notes tonight on equations of lines. This will involve finding the slope of lines, look at parallel and perpendicular lines, and writing the equations in both slope-intercept and point-slope. Most of this will be review from algebra, so you should be able to go pretty quickly through this video. The first thing we're going to talk about is finding the slope. If you remember from algebra, slope is finding the rise over the run. Now, we did use a formula to find this. If they give you a picture on a graph, you can count the units that you move up and over. But that is not always going to be the case. A lot of times they're just going to give you two ordered pairs, and we need a formula to plug that into. So the formula for this was y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now, all that means is you're subtracting the y values on top and the x values on bottom. The order is important. If I start with a particular y value on top, I have to start with its matching x value on the bottom. So let's look at an example. Find the slope of the line that goes to the points 3, 6 and 4, 2. It may be easiest if you name 3, 6, x sub 1, y sub 1, and name this ordered pair x sub 2, y sub 2. All of you don't necessarily have to do that, but if you have trouble remembering the formula, it may be helpful to do that. So if I plug that in, I'm going to have 2 minus 6 over 4 minus 3. We always want to simplify this as far as we can. You don't ever want to simplify it to a mixed number or simplify it to a decimal. So that simplifies to negative 4 over 1, which then simplifies to negative 4. Remember that we use the letter m to represent slope. We're going to see that a lot in slope-intercept form. Point-slope form, the m represents the slope. We have 4 different types of slope. You can have a positive slope, a negative slope, slope of 0, and an undefined slope. A positive slope is going to move upward from left to right. So if I'm going along here and I had the purple line, it's like I'm going uphill. Negative slope is going down. A slope of 0 is going to be a horizontal line. Lots of different ways you can think of that. You could think about there's a z in the word horizontal, hence slope of 0. The way I think about it is you can start to form a letter z with a horizontal line. Now, we are going to get into equations of lines of horizontal lines and vertical lines. Now, you may want to ask yourself, what axis am I crossing if I'm a horizontal line? Well, I'm obviously crossing the y-axis. That is going to be a y equals equation. And in this particular graph, it's y equals 3. An undefined slope is going to be a vertical line. It's going to go up and down. Again, with this, you can think you can't really make a z with this. You could start to make a u. It's a way to help you remember undefined slope. The equation of a vertical line is always going to be x equals some number. And you just want to look to see where the line is crossing the x-axis, and that's your value. Parallel lines are always going to have the same slope. You can think about they have the same steepness, they never intersect, therefore they have to have the same slope. The slope is like the steepness of the line. It's the average rate of change of the line. So parallel lines are always going to have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, we know they have to run into each other, and they hit each other at a right angle, so they have to have a very special relationship. They are going to have negative reciprocal slopes. What that means is the signs will be opposite, and the numbers will be reciprocals of each other. So if I had a slope of 3/4, the perpendicular slope would be negative 4/3. So if we look at this example that we have, find the slope of the lines parallel and perpendicular to y equals a negative 1/2 x plus 10. Well, the slope of the parallel line has to be exactly the same, so it's going to be negative 1/2. The slope of the perpendicular, I'm going to change the sign, so it has to be a positive, and I'm going to flip it. It's going to be 2. Now, the format of this equation we're going to talk about next. This is slope-intercept. Okay, so slope-intercept form, which you probably remember from algebra, is y equals mx plus b. The m represents the slope. The B represents the y-intercept. Remember, this is the point where the line is going to cross the y-axis. So if we have an example, write the equation of a line with a slope of 4 and a y-intercept of -5. All I'm going to do, I'm still going to have the y, I'm still going to have the x. All I'm going to do is replace the m with the slope and the b with a y-intercept. And I get y equals 4x minus 5. Point slope form is another format that you learn. Point slope form is a type of equation where we can look at this equation and we can specifically see both a point and a slope. Just like in slope intercept, you could pick out the slope and you could pick out the y-intercept. Point slope form is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. The m, just like before, represents the slope. The x sub 1 and the y sub 1 represents the point that they give us. So here's an example that we're going to use to go by. Write the equation of the line that goes through -3, 5 and has a slope of 2, and they want it in point slope form. So I'm going to take my values. This is my x sub 1, this is my y sub 1, and this is my slope. So I'm going to replace all these values for the values they gave me. And I get that. Now, if the directions say leave your equation in point slope form, I can leave it just like this. If my direction said put your equation in slope intercept form, I need to do a few steps further, which we're going to go to next. So, as I said, what if the directions say to put the equation in slope intercept form? Using the same equation we had, all that means is you want to get the y by itself. So if I look at this equation, the first thing I'm going to have to do is distribute my 2 to both parts. And I get 2x plus 6 on the right side. Then I'm going to add 5 to both sides to get y equals 2x plus 11. So now I can see that I have a slope of 2, so it's going to be rising, and a y-intercept of 11. That means on the y-axis, I have a point at 11. It's where my line crosses the y-axis. So sometimes they'll give us 2 points. So in other words, they did not give us a slope. So what are you going to do with 2 points? We have to have a slope to be able to write the equation. So I'm going to find the slope. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Then the procedures are just like what we did before. I'm going to plug into point slope form. I can just pick one of my points. It does not matter which point you pick. You should still get the same answer if all of your algebra is correct. If the directions say to put it in slope intercept form, then I'll solve for y last. So let's look at an example. Write the equation of the line through the points -3, 4 and 2, -6 in slope intercept form. I think part of this may have gotten cut off in the video, but I think you can see the points at least. So the first step I want to do is find the slope. I get a slope of -2 using these 2 ordered pairs. Then I can pick either value and plug it into point slope form. I used the point -3, 4. You could have used 2, -6. Try it. You'll still get the same answer. Then I'm going to isolate the y because remember the direction said slope intercept form. And I'm going to distribute -2 first. Then I'm going to add 4 to both sides to give me an equation of y equals -2x minus 2. So -2 is my slope. That means it's falling from left to right. And it crosses the y-axis at -2. We have 2 more examples. Write the equation of the line that goes through the point -2, and is parallel to this equation. Now the only thing I want to pull from this equation is the slope. I want it to be parallel to this line. That means they have to have the same slope. So I'm going to be using the slope 1/2 in the point -2, -2 to write my equation. I'm going to follow the same procedure as before. I'm going to plug it into point slope form. And then the directions didn't specifically say what form they wanted it in. 9 times out of 10, your answer is going to need to be in slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's isolate the y. So I'm going to distribute 1/2 to both x and positive 2, and then I'm going to minus the 2, and you should get y equals 1/2 x minus 1. And our last problem, again, I believe it got cut off a little. Write the equation of the line that is perpendicular to y equals negative 3x and goes through the point 3, 1. So again, they give me this equation. The only thing I want to pull from this equation is the slope. But rather than having exactly the same slope, I'm going to want the opposite reciprocal because it needs to be perpendicular. So the slope I want needs to be a positive 1/3. And then I'm going to use the point 3, 1. I'm going to do as before and plug it into point slope form. I'm going to distribute 1/3 and then add 1, and I get y equals 1/3 x. So the y-intercept, because I don't have a plus or minus anything, that means the y-intercept is at 0. It's at the origin. So this equation goes through the origin and has a slope of 1/3. So it's rising from left to right. We'll do some more examples in class and go over some graphing later, but I will see y'all tomorrow.